Hey everybody, just sitting out here filming the moon. Hold on, it's zoomed in real tight here. I got my Nikon. This is my old Nikon P500. That is zoomed in all. Look how the moon is rising when I set it. You can actually see the moon moving in my frame. See the bright spot on the bottom right side of the screen, almost going up to the middle side of the screen now? That is Antarctic crater. That's like the belly button. Look at all the lines spidering out of it. That looks like, hold on, let me touch it. That looks like, oops, I bumped it. That looks like the joint of a Mylar balloon. Like the belly button of a balloon, doesn't it? You can see on the top of the screen, going off the screen, is Tranquility Bay. Or Sea of Tranquility. And other craters you can recognize on the moon. Let's see if I can get it to focus. It's on autofocus. See if it gets any more true focus. Look at that, it keeps climbing out of the frame. It goes up so fast. It's crossing the sky, the moon is. There we go. This is a 38 times zoom camera. Look at that, it's going off to the right and it's rising. It's going up towards the right hand corner of the screen, and I have to chase it. The longer I look at it, the more I have to go up and chase it. So that is the moon. I wish it was a little more focus, I think. Hold on, let's set it up for another moonrise. There we go. So what do you think the moon's made out of? Since most likely no one's ever been there, do you think you could stand on it? Most of the scientists, who was that scientist I saw in the 50s, interviewed on camera and said that the moon was some type of a plasma phenomenon. And he even said there's no way you could stand on it. It's just a source of light. You know, and the moon has its own light. It's different than sunlight. And I've got another video where I'm showing you Hunter's moon. If you look up Hunter's moon on my channel, I show you where the moon is reflecting downward into the northeast, where my back is facing the west, and the moon's shadow, the terminator line, is not facing where the sun went down at all. And it's just after midnight, and it had been that way for the whole evening since it got dark at dusk, you know. Just the light breeze is making that shake, because I'm zoomed in so tight on the moon with this, you know, I don't have a P900 or a P1000, but if you really, we would be looking inside of craters. I've actually done that before. When I take pictures, I can zoom better. And I don't know why it doesn't, at this quality range, it doesn't zoom any better into the craters. But I can actually look inside of craters with this camera. So, isn't it odd though, if it's a light source, that it's got that Antarctic crater? And isn't that the crater that has the blue light over it? One of the craters on the moon looks like a blue dome, and it's got something lit underneath it. There are some craters right now that are on the top right edge of the moon that have pathways in the middle of them. Have you seen how a lot of the craters have like a little mound of material in the middle of the crater? I've heard physics experts say that according to the dimensions and the angles of the walls of these craters, that they are not from impacts of meteors or something like that, because they're not, they don't have the shape of an impact. Something else happened there. But you know, a lot of people, like, is it the Is it the Buddhists that believe you ride the moon after you die? You have to go back through the moon to reincarnate and come back to Earth? Could there be people, spirits up there, just waiting to pick their mom and dad if they get to, and be assigned to another womb and get born on Earth? Who knows? Here, I'll let go of it. I'm trying to zoom in. That's just... Now, I'm telling you, like I said, if I was snapping snapshots, I could get a lot closer. I didn't know that. But what do you think? Do you think, my camera's not even the greatest camera, and there are cameras out there that can see a lot more detail inside of every crater that you want. And we can't find any reflectors, we can't find any rovers, we can't find any landing modules. You would see them. With the technology we have today, you would see that stuff. If it's on the lit side of the moon, not the dark side. I guess it could be a hobby to get into studying the moon and learning all the names of all the craters. I know right now at the top is Tranquility Bay, which is the two stuck together like the figure 8. That's allegedly around that area where all of the, I think, within that vicinity from a radius from that is where all of the moon landings were allegedly occurring. The 6 moon landings during President Nixon's era. Now, wasn't it Nixon who said the American people don't believe anything until they see it on television? And we saw 6 moon landings on television. And who was the president during that entire time? Richard Nixon. I personally, like I said, I don't think anyone's walked on it. I don't think you could. Like scientists said, once they started launching Saturn rockets with astronauts going to the moon's surface, all those scientists and before that with their telescopes had to shut up and disappear, because they couldn't say, hey, this can't be right, you can't walk on the moon, it's a plasma substance. Hey, you can't say that. Whack. But the moon is so full and bright now. It was pink and it had a red ring around it, and it's been doing some funny colors for the last week. I don't know why specifically. But look how quickly it goes off the screen. I have to chase it on my tripod. It's crossing the sky. Have you ever calculated the distance to the sun using trigonometry and shadows? You can use data from NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association, NOAA. You can get their shadow data from 3 cities, like pick one in around Iberia, Europe, and one in the US and one in South America, and triangulate, find your base height. Then you're going to calculate along your vertical axis what's called a parsec, which is just an extremely long unit of measure, like a mile. It's longer than a mile, that you use for distances like to the moon and the sun. Then you take, you do your trigonometry, your opposite over adjacent, and you come up with a number that tells you how many miles away the sun is. And we use the shadows from NOAA and trigonometry, and we get about 3,042 miles. Now, why is that? And other astronomers have said 93 million. Well, I think it was only one astronomer that said 93 million. One of them said 18 million, one said 26 million or something like that. They were all over the place. But I guess the people who are in charge, who really own the largest telescopes, and all of the astronomers seem to be of that same faith, they all picked the furthest one away and said, okay, 93 million miles. Do you know why they get 93 million and we get 3,042? They're using the same math, but when you do a math equation, whatever math you're using, it's a tool, and you have to state your assumptions before you do your math, or that the same equation will give you a different result. if you assume that you're on a flat plane and all three poles, one in Europe, one in North America, one in South America, are on a flat plane, then the poles are parallel to one another. And you calculate those shadows, and you assume you're on a flat plane, you get 3,000 something miles. Now, if you're trying to say that the sun is 93 million miles away, what you're doing is you're making the shadows of those poles parallel to each other. Not the poles, but the shadows of the poles would be infinitesimally, asymptotically parallel, basically. So the question is, you're using the same exact math, but you're saying, you ask yourself, do you want to assume you're on a plane or assume you're on a ball with the diameter and radius given and the drop around the curve of 8 inches times mile squared? Or do you want to assume you're on a plane? And the question is, do you want the poles to be parallel or do you want the shadows from the poles to be parallel? That's the only difference. So when all this research flat earth stuff came up in 2016, was it early 2017? I don't remember now. And that billboard around Philadelphia, and the people came, and I used to live around Philadelphia. I lived in New Jersey in Vineland, and when I worked for the vaccine lab, and I used to fly out of Philadelphia all the time. I know right where that billboard was, and I'm in Houston. But they had the guy from the Franklin Institute, the director, on TV, on the news, saying, "Oh, Earth's not flat. We know that because we've measured the distance to the sun using shadows." And he scoffs, but so do we. It's the same math. In fact, it's the same equation. It's the same trig. But it's a different assumption. Anytime you apply, I'm an economist, and anytime you apply a mathematical model, it's all the same math. Economists learn the same math and go to the same math classes with the physics and the math majors, you know. So if you use the same math, but you just make a different little assumption, and that's it. I'm just putting in a ball of wax for you. Do you want the shadows to be parallel, or do you want the poles to be parallel? So, how you doing? Good. That's all it takes is, that's how you can explain it to people. Use the same shadow data, but start with a different assumption that you're on a flat plane, not on a ball with the diameter given to you by NASA and other space agencies. Because then you have to add in other calculations than the trig to put in the radius of the Earth between those poles and the drop, and calculate, you know, until you get the shadows to be parallel. So then what really is flaky about that whole thing is the further you go out, it's like an asymptote, and they're infinitesimally almost parallel, the shadows, because you're making up the curve to whatever you want it to be until the shadows are parallel. And then you can say, well, it's 93 million miles away, which is a number no one can conceive in their mind. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. Let's watch the moon go up one more time across the screen. Can we go in any tighter? Yeah, focus. Let me raise it up. There you go. Stop touching it. You know, some people ask, if the moon is round, do you think it's a ball? Then if the moon is round and the sun is round, then why would the Earth be flat? And what does the shape of the Earth have to do with those objects? I actually think that the planets, the wandering stars, they all have some type of radius over an infinite plane that goes beyond our limits or our ice wall. And I also don't believe that ice is holding in our oceans, because we more like live in a basin. It's like your sink on your bathroom counter or your kitchen sink on your kitchen counter. The oceans have the continents in them, and we live on the parts that stick up out of the water. But beyond the limits of the plane, we can't get to. But I think maybe beings from other planets have their own dimension, frequency, and realm where they can come to the plane. And when they cross into ours, that's done through other means, let's just say. You've got to do something like CERN or some type of ritual. Or who knows? I'm speculating. These would be theories. I'm generally not a theorist. I just do math and look at things. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. This is Alex Aquarius. As the moon goes off the screen, please hit subscribe and ring that bell. I'm starting to put up more videos now. I've got a new webcam. I'm using this camera more. I've got a selfie stick. I'm using my cell phone. I got a better cell phone. My quality is improving. But I do have a lot of videos that you can look at that I've done for about 3 years. I've got about 380 videos, and they're all deep rabbit hole topics of all different types. And you can look into them, please. I think you will enjoy the topics. All right. Have a good night. Bye.